And we're joined on the phone today by comedian, actor, author Michael Ian Black. And we're talking about his new book, A Better Man, a mostly serious letter to my son. Hey, Michael, how's it going today?
I'm great. How are you? Good morning.
It's great to be speaking with you, Michael. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, my total pleasure.
Well, let's talk a bit about the new book you've got here, A Better Man, a mostly serious letter to my son. Can you tell the listeners a bit about the book? What are we in for?
Probably a lot of, primarily reading. And I would say the topic is exactly as described in the subtitle. It is a mostly serious letter to my son as he was leaving last year high school to go to college. And I wanted to write him something that maybe reflected a little bit of what I've learned over the years about being a guy, and hopefully to impart what little knowledge I have onto him.
Well, and I know this is definitely different than the more comedic stuff that some of the listeners might know you from. What made you decide to write the book?
There were a lot of things going on. And for your listeners who know me, they know me primarily from comedy and television shows and movies, and I do stand-up and I do podcasts and all the rest of it. But I also felt like there were some things that I needed to say about being a guy. And right around when his senior year started, there was the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. And we had lived through the Sandy Hook shooting when he was in elementary school, the town right next door to us in Newtown. So I've been paying a lot of attention to gun violence and those issues. And then when Marjorie Stoneman Douglas happened, I just started asking the question, like, why is it always boys who are pulling the trigger on these crimes? Why is it that boys and young men commit so many violent acts? And I ended up writing an op-ed for the New York Times about it, and then a publisher asked me if I would consider writing a book about it. And after some hemming and hawing, I said, you know what, I will. And so I did. And I'm not an expert on this stuff. I'm just a dad with a son. And it's a really personal book. A lot of it's about my own growing up, my relationship with my own father, my relationship with my mom and her partner. My mom was gay. And the reason my parents split up when I was young is because she got involved with this other woman, and my upbringing there and how that affected sort of the way I thought about myself as a guy. And, my own struggles and lessons as I grew into an adult. And, so I think like any dad, like I'm trying to make it a little easier for my son, hopefully with a slight sense of humor, which is why the book is called A Mostly Serious Letter to My Son, not an entirely serious letter to my son.
Yeah, obviously your childhood was, different than your son's. And like a lot of fathers, you sort of end up learning this stuff on the job, I guess.
I think every father experiences the same terror, when your first child is born. There's this little helpless thing, and you're like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? The mothers at least sort of understand that they can feed the child, and that's helpful. But dads are like, okay, I'm pretty much useless in this situation. And it seems like this kid doesn't even like me very much. And additionally, like most of the time, like in that moment, your wife doesn't even like you very much. So you're kind of like, what is my job here? And it takes a little while. It takes a little while to understand who you are in this new role as a father. It took me a little while. But having undertaken that job, I don't think you'll ever find a dad who regrets it. It's the best thing you do.
Definitely. Again, Michael Ian Black's with us. We're talking about his new book, A Better Man, a mostly serious letter to my son. And what did your son think when he read the book, Michael? How did he react to it?
Oh, Dustin, he hasn't read it. Come on. Come on. You think he's actually going to read the book that I wrote to him? Come on, man. He's got it on the table next to his bed, and he has cracked it open, but I don't think he's made it very far yet.
Well, hopefully somebody's son out there can take some of this and apply it to their lives then.
I would hope. I actually think it's probably harder when it's your own dad who wrote the book than if it's somebody else's dad. It's a lot easier to read like somebody's vulnerability and sort of deep thoughts on a subject when it's not your actual dad.
Well, of course, things are very different now than they were back, when you and I were growing up. And, the idea of acting like a man, boys will be boys, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not what it is, even like it was 10, 20 years ago.
No, I do think it's changing a little bit for the better, but I think there's still, these things change slowly. They take generations, I think, to change. And I'm pretty frank about that in this book. I'm pretty upfront in saying, look, I don't think this book is going to change anything, but I do think it can be a small voice in a much larger conversation that's starting to happen. And it might help not only dads, but I think moms and young men to just understand kind of how to frame the conversation, even for themselves, how to even start thinking about it. And it's not an instruction manual by any means. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I think I talk about a lot of things that maybe guys are thinking about, but don't haven't maybe synthesized their thoughts entirely. And so maybe I can help push them in one direction or another.
Well, Michael, I know you have a daughter close to the same age. How has that shaped your perspective? And I guess, will we have another book from you maybe for her in a couple of years here?
Well, she's obviously my favorite child. But, I've been thinking about writing her a book. And one of the interesting things about the difference between writing a book for boys and writing a book for girls, or young women and young men, is that there's already so many books out there in the marketplace that are about empowering young women. There's so many books written from women to other women, mothers to daughters, sisters to sisters, mentors to mentees. Like, that field is so firmly established and rich that I don't know that I could say anything better than is out there already, but there just aren't that many books from guy to guy about this topic. So when she graduates from high school this year, I think I'll just write her a check. It'll be a lot easier for both of us.
Well, Michael, I know the book is just out, but is there anything coming up for you on the acting front? I mean, obviously, stuff has kind of been put on hold everywhere, but is there anything in the works as far as acting goes? Well,
things are just now starting to slowly kind of trickle in. So I'm going to go shoot some episodes of Reno 911. I'm going to go shoot a day on a movie. And that's it for the moment. But hopefully things will start to pick up again. Yeah, it's hard. With COVID, it's really hard because there's all these, a television or film set is a very intimate place. People are generally working in pretty close contact. There's a lot of them. You have to have, it has to be thought out really well. I think I've only been back on one set since. And, it was interesting to see how all the protocols were done. Like when I go shoot Reno in a few weeks, we're all going to be quarantined together in a hotel for a couple of weeks. And, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I know it'll be fun. The only question is, will anybody get sick? And I hope not.
Well, yeah, speaking of Reno, I got to ask you, a lot of shows are getting reboots and revivals, and everybody I know and everyone I grew up with, huge fans of the state. I got to ask, you think maybe that'll come back in some form? I know you're, as you mentioned, hanging out with the guys from Reno now.
Well, I would love to. And I think those guys would love to also. It's really just a question of, does anybody in the market want to write a check and put us on their television network? If they do, yeah, we'll do it.
Awesome. Well, again, the new book is great, A Better Man, A Mostly Serious Letter to My Son. What's next for you? Is there something maybe coming up we should be watching out for?
I'm going to be voting on Election Day. That's the thing I'm mostly focused on right now. I'm volunteering to work the polls that day, so I'm going to be I don't even know what you call it, a poll worker.
There you go. Michael, I've been a fan of yours for a long time, and it's been great speaking with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin. It was a real pleasure.
And again, that was Michael Ian Black and his new book, A Better Man, A Mostly Serious Letter to My Son, is available now.